The Raptors' win streak is over. A loss to the Hornets. It was ugly, especially down the stretch. Let's go to the film room.
The only thing that's originally filmed is that and I've studied older films and tried to figure out how I got that impression. I was getting meetings right in the cutting room.
The unique thing about film is an art form
exactly.
is the editing.
The Raptors got outscored 30-11 in the final 5 minutes of the fourth quarter and overtime against the Hornets tonight. And you might wonder, was that offensive issues? Was that defensive issues? Trick question. It was both. As I've said before, clutch time is Brandon Ingram time for the Raptors, but I thought it took them too long to get into their actions. There's 14 seconds left on this clock as they run this off-ball screen for BI. And look, nothing happens of it because he isn't able to get a good advantage off of that screen. Instead, he's forced to go one-on-one, and probably a little bit too much dribbling there from BI, gets his shot blocked. I thought ultimately the Raptors handed BI a lot of grenades offensively in this game. Like here, they see Liam McNeely on BI, and he quickly evades that double by kicking it out to Quick. And look, it just takes too long for them to get back into their action. Too much ball watching. Even off ball, there's nothing else going on between the other three players, and so the defense can stay set. And they're just looking for BI. It's a little bit too one-track minded, and teams have absolutely caught on. Quickly slips here, Raptors force a turnover, and Charlotte is out and running. So look, another situation where they have 14 seconds left on the clock. Option screens for BI, and so again, we've talked about this before, but a cross screen, there's a pin down here for him, or staggered pins, because Scottie here can set another screen for him. So BI has a lot of options to him. He gets into that pinch post area, but look, there's 5 seconds left on the clock before he catches this ball. It is a grenade. He has to find an immediate shot. This is way too much pressure on BI to be your guy in the clutch. And look, I get it. BI has been awesome. He's been an elite mid-range scorer. We just are coming off a sick game winner against the Pacers. It's hard to be too down on this team. But look, they're 9-1. They had a really bad, ugly loss. So let's carve them up a little bit in order for them to be better moving forward. I think that's what the coaching staff probably says after this one too. Same thing here, man. Look at this. So shot clock winding down, 9 seconds left. And again, it takes too long. And look at where the catch is for BI here. 6 seconds left. He's catching it above the break, 3-point line, 5 feet behind the 3-point line. You're going to get forced into a pretty tough look here. BI has been consistently able to knock down these looks, but you're providing him with a grenade when he is the only guy you're going to. And I thought this was a laughable decision by IQ in this game. It is a 2-point game. You have 20 seconds left on the shot clock. If anything, you should be burning as much time as possible because the Hornets have been hot. They've caught up in this game. Your offense has not been looking good. To chuck up this shot, and I get IQ is great in transition, especially as a 3-point shooter. This is a good look. This is open, etc. Just time and clock is very important in these situations. And this is the final play of overtime where Knipple gets to the baseline, gets to the corner, and 12.6 seconds left. Does a really great job of this little jab to get BI to bite on it, and really, really quick release here and jump and knocks it down. That was really awesome stuff from Knipple, but BI, you got to get a hand up. You just have to get a hand up in these situations. And I know some people will say, well, look, they probably weren't trying to foul, right? Or if anything, they didn't want to cause a shooting foul in this situation. You're not going to get called for a shooting foul if you put your hands straight up. That's all you needed to do. Just provide a contest, and you would have been fine. That is what BI should have done in that situation. And again, look at how overextended this Raptors offense is. Jakob Poeltl catching it above the break. Look at how far Scottie catches it. This is just way too much reliance on BI trying to get something going in clutch. Double comes late, and he's forced into a really tough shot. So the fourth quarter was just Miles Bridges hunting IQ. The Hornets run a ball screen between Bridges and Sexton. The Raptors switched this. Honestly, I thought they had a lot of unnecessary switches in these situations. You got to be able to fight through some screens sometimes. A lot of NBA teams are prone to this. They just give up switches for no reason. Bridges now has IQ on him, and he just cooks him one-on-one. Now, this time they get the switch for Shed to be on him, and Shed reaches over here. Bridges gets driving lane, draws the foul. And so the Raptors lose. The fourth quarter and overtime was terrible. Thank you very much for tuning into the Film Room, folks. As always, like, comment, subscribe, etc., etc. We appreciate you guys as always. Look, I don't want to belabor the point, but the Raptors were really bad in the fourth quarter and overtime. They are 9-1 in their last 10. They've played really, really good basketball. Of course, as we all can imagine, it's been really fun to watch this team play good basketball. And we have seen them play not so good basketball over the last little bit. Part of that is, I think teams are catching up in clutch situations now. This is the second clutch game they played. And if you go back and watch the Pacers breakdown that I did, you'll see that I talked about how teams are figuring out what to do with BI in these pinch post and isolation situations. Either they'll send help late to make sure that the playmaking isn't there, and that he has to get forced into an ISO situation, and that he has to be forced into late shot clock situations, or they usually have a defender that can guard BI in a way that makes it tough on him, i.e. Pascal Siakam and the Pacers. Now, look, BI hit a game winner. It was awesome. It was great. But I thought there was a level of over-reliance on BI in clutch situations, and that's been the case through all 10 of their clutch games. They've now played 10 quote-unquote clutch games, which means 5 points or fewer in the fourth quarter. And tonight was one of them. Now, I think part of the reason they are so over-reliant on BI, not just throughout the game, but especially in clutch situations, is the fact that they're missing RJ Barrett, who they desperately miss offensively. One, as an innings eater, as a guy who, within the flow of the offense, within the flow of the game, in transitional lineups, can really attack in transition. One, attack tilted defenses in the half court. Be a guy who can, for a lack of better words, get things going for you when nothing is happening. And BI is that guy for them, but so is RJ Barrett, who can barrel his way to the basket, get driving lanes, get into the teeth of the defense. For all of Scottie Barnes by the way, Scottie had an incredible game, and we'll get to that. But for all of what Scottie can do offensively, for all of what IQ can do offensively, for all of what BI can do offensively, none of those guys are good at getting to the rim just by being good as a driver. Like IQ needs a screen, and he needs a good screen to get into the paint. Scottie can work in the post, but he's more of a back-to-the-basket guy, and so it's very rare he'll have an opportunity, and again, he had a couple tonight, but it's very rare for him to get an opportunity to burst to the basket and get downhill. BI also needs a good screen. RJ, while the screening certainly helps, he is so strong that he can get to the rim basically at will, and that churns offense for the Raptors consistently. It's also, he's a great cutter, so he was finding a lot of good opportunities, especially in the clutch, off of Brandon Ingram. That 45 cut that he had, if you remember, in the same Hornets game, that wasn't really there tonight. And if you looked at some of the possessions that I just broke down, there wasn't a lot of movement from the Raptors when BI had the ball in those situations. So his playmaking couldn't really be opened up either way. And so this is a multi-layered problem, if you will. I imagine there will be people who will complain about the officiating in this game. The Hornets ended up taking 29 free throws, made 26. The Raptors took just 17. The Raptors got called for 26 fouls. The Hornets got called for 19. There were a lot of knick-knack fouls, a lot of a lot of tic-tac fouls, a lot of weird plays, broken plays, where Bridges or Sexton or Moussa Diabate, who I'm a big fan of, by the way. I like Moussa Diabate a lot. Those guys would like grab it, get called for a foul on the other end. And the officiating was weird. The whistle was weird tonight. I will validate you in that sense. That still doesn't matter as much in the grand scheme of things, especially when you go like 5 minutes in the fourth quarter scoreless. And again, you might be screaming at your screen right now and say, but the reason they went scoreless is because they weren't getting calls. Sure, maybe. Yeah, probably in some possessions that's true. But at the same time, that just can't be the thing for you, Playoff basketball, that will happen. NBA Cup basketball, that will happen. The whistle gets a little bit tighter, right? You don't get those calls as often. And you have to learn to play through that. You have to learn to, in spite of a whistle, play. And so I don't really buy into the officiating stuff, although I will hand it to you. The officiating was weird tonight. And the Raptors have been on the other side of a couple of bad whistles, is what it is. I will say, that's not why they lost this game. They lost this game because they were absolutely abhorrent offensively in the clutch. They were also abhorrent and terrible in the defensive end. Quickly got hunted. BI got hunted. There were a lot of bad offensive rebound situations. The Raptors played a bad game. They played a bad game. The only player who played a good game for the Raptors was Scottie Barnes. He was exceptional in this game. 30 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, a block, 11 of 16 shooting, 69% from the field. He even knocked down a 3 in this game. Scottie was awesome. He used his physicality in a major way. He was working in the post. I don't think the Hornets had any sort of option against him and how strong he was and physical he was. I mentioned this on Twitter as I was going through the film tonight. Sometimes you need a hammer and sometimes you need a scalpel. Brandon Ingram serves as the scalpel for the Raptors, carving up teams with his precision, his accuracy, his ability to dissect in a slow and methodical way. Scottie Barnes, however, is a battering ram, a guy who can out-physical any opponent. He can be a beast, a guy who can just break you down with his sheer strength and dominance. And tonight, the Raptors needed the latter. They needed the Scottie Barnes to be the physical, dominant player because there was no one else on the Hornets that can contain him while he was doing that. You saw it with the stat line that he had tonight. And I thought some of the Raptors' possessions where they went to Scottie, they got their best opportunities. Early fourth quarter here, get pinch post area for Scottie Barnes, and he just takes Zion James 1-2, rises up over top. That is a part of, strength, being able to get to his spots, but also the size, the length that he has. Zion James is shorter than him. There's no way that he's contesting that look. Earlier in the third quarter against Moussa Diabate, just rises up with the left. Such a soft finish and the bank shot, lefty hook. That's awesome stuff from Scottie in the post. But look, in the clutch, in a dying clock situation against Moussa Diabate, Scottie's able to really maneuver through these spaces. 1, use his speed against Moussa, and 2, use his strength to finish in this situation. Instead they run a cross screen for Scottie here in the post against Miles Bridges. And again, Bridges is also another guy who cannot guard Scottie Barnes in these situations. He's just too physical. It creates an offensive rebounding opportunity for the Raptors. So this is a set design for the Raptors. They run a guard screen between Shed and IQ. IQ slips this. There's also a flare screen here for Scottie. Flare, but it also can work into a pick and roll situation. So if Scottie sets this a little bit sooner, that means Quick gets a flare and gets an open shot here, or they can flow into a pick and roll, which is what they do. And Scottie slips this. IQ attacks the closeout. Good job getting into the middle of the defense. And Scottie with great positioning against Bridges. Again, good opportunity, good finish. He's able to keep himself square always in these situations, which is why he's so good in that post area. And again, back to the whole hammer versus scalpel thing, I think the Raptors need to find a balance, especially in fourth quarter and overtime situations, where they can find opportunities for BI, but also find opportunities for Scottie. I think truthfully, there has to be more of a focus on if you do lean into a BI heavy offense, there needs to be movement around him because there was far too much stagnation offensively off of the ball when BI had the ball. And you got to be quicker, right? These are the things that, again, the coaching staff will implore the Raptors to do. One, move into your actions quicker. There's no reason that it should be, 10 to 5 seconds left on the clock with BI catching the ball. Two, if we do run pinch post or ISO actions for BI, you have to have movement and off-screen stuff happening, off-of-ball stuff happening, so that the defense can be shifted, be tilted, so that BI can attack a tilted defense and so that your other creators can work off of the tilted defense. And number three, you probably need to mix it up a little bit. Can't just be BI. Teams now know this, right? You've played 10 clutch games. Teams will know. And while Brandon Ingram is an elite scorer, one who is literally the best mid-range scorer to start this season right now, you need diversity. You need diversity in your actions. And I think the Raptors sorely missed out on some diversity tonight. They needed more Scottie Barnes. They definitely needed RJ Barrett. And I think that is the main note to have from this one loss for the Toronto Raptors. This is now, after this game, they're entering a tough little bit of their schedule. A real test of who you are type of stretch for the Raptors. They play the Knicks tonight, if you're watching this in the morning, or tomorrow night if you're watching this right now. They play the Knicks on Sunday night. No RJ Barrett, no OG Anunoby on the other side. We'll see if Jakob Poeltl rests. Kind of curious to see if that ends up being the case because Jakob, since that back situation, hasn't played in back-to-backs. We'll see if that's the case. But yeah, you play the Knicks, then you come back home to play the Blazers, Lakers, Hornets, Celtics, and then the Knicks again in an NBA Cup game. Really, no scheduled win. You could maybe argue the Hornets, but as we've seen in the past, the Hornets are no easy game for the Raptors. This is another thing. You are a fool if you thought the Raptors were going to play an easy and simple and methodical type of game against the Hornets. You must be new around here because the Raptors, I don't know what it is. They've signed a blood pact. Maybe it's something that was, agreed upon by Odysseus on his journeys. They just, for some reason, play weird games against the Hornets. Shout out Gerald Henderson. Shout out Jeremy Lamb. Shout out Emeka Oak. Man, anybody, really. You go back into history for the Raptors and Hornets, they've played some strange basketball games. Tonight was one of them. The other night, a couple weeks ago when they beat them in the BI block and all that type of stuff and the Scottie block, that was also another weird game. And looking at the Hornets on the schedule in the middle of all those good teams, that's also going to be a weird game, I bet you. So yeah, that's also on the second night of a back-to-back when Luka and the Lakers come in town. So tough stretch for this Raptors team coming up. A real what are you made of type of stretch. And so I think this was, if we want to leave on a glass half full type of note, this was a much needed punch in the mouth for the Raptors. This was the medicine that you had to swallow in order to eventually feel better for the Toronto Raptors, because they had sort of gotten off on perhaps being a little overconfident in their fourth quarter execution and fourth quarter scheme. They clearly have become a little stagnant offensively without RJ Barrett and his driving and his, at rim finishing. And ultimately they need to diversify. They need to find a way to create better shots on offense if RJ is expected to miss a little bit of time here. And overall, and I think this is another part to this, the bench has also struggled over the last couple of games. Some of that bench voodoo great stuff that you got from them to start the season has started to cool off a little bit. And so when you don't have, Mamu coming in for 15 a night, or Shed giving you 9 assists, or, one of Jameson coming in for a couple threes, and Ochai and Grady are clearly struggling from three, if you're not getting some juice from those guys, you're also really doubling down on those starters to be your guys for you. And I mean, you look at the box score, that matches, right? 30 points for Scottie, 22 for BI on 26 shots, IQ with 22 points on 20 shots. It's not efficient offense. It's not. And so this was a good punch in the mouth for the Toronto Raptors. A little, it's a loss in which they can be humbled from and learn from. Now, you have to learn from it. And that's why there's a regular season, you know, and I'm not going to go too long-winded here, but that's why there's a regular season. That's why they play these games, to learn if you really got what it takes when it's all said and done. Let's see if the Raptors have what it takes, because they played really good basketball. Now they got to deal with some adversity. Let's see if they got it. All right, folks, as always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do those things you guys do to make sure this gets out to other people. We appreciate you as always. Thank you for sticking with us with the losses as you do with the W's. I imagine there will be more W's on the way for the Raptors. We'll see how they do against the Knicks. We'll see how they do on this stretch. Appreciate you guys as always. We'll see ya. Peace.